Brendan's back.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so big thank you to Transhuman Queen and Peter for inviting me out to give this presentation. Thank you all for listening. I've got a presentation. I think it's meant to go for about 45 minutes or something. Now, during the presentation, if anyone needs to, just message Peter and I'll stop and I'll answer any questions. I'm happy to take questions as we go, and there'll be room for questions at the end if we want to. Yeah, thank you all for your time, and I will get started.
Sweet.
Okay, so the presentation is about our transhuman AgTech future. Okay, for the longest time, every human on Earth spent nothing more than spending all their available time ensuring their own survival. We lived a nomadic lifestyle, focused on hunting and collecting the food that we needed to survive, completely at the mercy of nature. I think you can see where this is going. But humans have one distinct advantage over other animals. Instead of just evolving to suit our environment, what's that? It's a good bit, GPT. We can use our opposable thumbs to shape the environment to suit us. And 14,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, we began creating a technology that would change the human race dramatically, and that's with the invention of agriculture. In my opinion, probably the single most important invention of the human race. Killer app. It was the original killer app. So this technology allowed us to move out of the fertile areas that we evolved in, to live in almost every environment on Earth. And we've even been able to take the first steps off Earth with humans right now living permanently in space. Now, this is one of 2 satellites with humans living permanently on it. And like, this really blows my mind when I sit there and actually think about it. Like, they wake up and go to sleep every day for 6 months in space. Also, if you haven't seen it, there's the new Chinese space station is in operation, and I saw it the other night. I woke up at 3:30. Who's kidding? I was still awake at 3:30. I walked outside my apartment and I watched it go across the sky.
No.
And it was cool. At magnitude 2.1. This thing is brighter than anything else in the sky. It was awesome. Highly recommend searching for an app and going and seeing it for yourself. It's remarkable what we can do. Okay, so one way to think about progress is a mastery over nature. The most notable example is probably that I can think of as the mastery of grain and animals through domestication that allowed us to form sessile civilizations, right? So we've gone from moving around, having a nomadic lifestyle, to settling down in one spot. This freed up some of our brain to think about more than just farming. So for the first time, we have an abundance of nutrients, and we can start doing things other than hunting and gathering. So it frees up our mind to think about what it's all about and where we might want to go with that. And I think about this, agriculture is the beginnings of a transhuman society. Once we move past that, we can start imagining to become more than we are. As the technology grows, we're starting to realize that this technology is not just business as usual. Like the scythe on the end of the arm, we're evolving technologies that allow us to become more than our human bodies allow us to be. The definition of transhumanism is the belief in using technology and science to enhance human abilities and transcend the limitations of the human condition. We can see this in farming. So we use machines to basically shape our environment and do things that we as humans on our own can't do. The combine harvester is literally an extension of ourselves. And as we progress with technology, we increase our rates of survival, which we're already doing with transhumanism. We're going to need more resources to feed a growing population. So it creates the problem and it solves the problem. Now, in Australia, we're pretty lucky. We don't really worry too much about food. We have good food security, but that's not necessarily the case around the world. William Gibson very famously has said the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed yet. So even though in some countries we have really access to really great technology, that's not the same for everyone around the world. And some of the technologies I'll talk about today, I love the far future stuff, but there's some really simple technologies that we're coming up with now that can help people in developing countries to have better quality of life. And I think one of the best things we can do as transhumans isn't extend us so far beyond what we can do. It's to bring everyone up to just a zero level to begin with and give everyone a quality of life. So just on a side note, I've been asked to help one of my friends who has a genetic condition that means he has a life expectancy of 50. And I've been looking at like, how am I going to live till 120? And I realized there's some technology now which can just extend one person's life till probably 70. And it's trivial, really. Like for a molecular biologist, not that hard. And I thought, wow, maybe the biggest advances we can do is just getting everyone to the same starting point. Okay, so it's fine. So basically, this is kind of the thesis for my links between transhumanism and farming. There's this quote. It's not actually Marshall that probably said this, but he said a lot of stuff that means that he just took it. So anyway, we shape the tools and then the tools shape us. And never has this been more true than things like genetic technologies. We literally are fusing with the technologies that we create. And on a more fundamental level, the tools we create allow us to dream and think in different directions that make us the types of humans that the tools allow. And we're seeing this now at GPT-2. It's very interesting. Okay, on to the second part. There's about 5 parts to this presentation. Okay, benefits of transhumanism in farming and technology. I'll zip through. So the most obvious uses of technology is increasing the efficiency and productivity of the farming we already do. So the 2 biggest ones I'll cover, most of you are probably familiar with them, the invention of the Haber process that allowed us to make fertilizers from atmospheric nitrogen, which is a chemical process, and then probably the developments in grain done by Norman Borlaug, which enabled us to create hyper-productive strains of wheat. It wasn't using GMO, it was using traditional forms of breeding, but I think about them as pretty much the same kind of thing. It's just one is like building a sandcastle with boxing gloves and one's like building with tweezers. There are some problems that can arise when you're building with tweezers. Maybe your sandcastle is a little bit too good, but we'll talk about that in a sec. But basically, the aims of this technology is to increase efficiency and productivity while reducing waste. The other forms of GMO, we'll cover in a little bit, are basically around reducing the need for pesticides. So we'll see this in BT crops. And the other one is around decreasing the need for bad herbicides. And we see this in Roundup Ready crops. So those are kind of the 2 rough areas there. Technology allows us to have more sustainable farming practices. So this picture here is illustrating what is called precision agriculture. Basically what it does is it uses a combination of imagery and robots to deliver nutrients, pesticides, and herbicides exactly to where it needs to go. So the way that they do this is they use a technology called hyperspectral imaging, where a data cube is created by basically taking photos at individual wavelengths all the way across the spectrum and outside the visible spectrum on both sides. And we can use computers to take that data cube, which is basically if you think about it as a matrix of 2D images into a 3-dimensional image. Computers can then go and analyze this and work out absorbances at different wavelengths. And we can say, oh, okay, a plant that's unhealthy might absorb at a certain wavelength and reflect at another wavelength. We can say that a plant that's growing really well might do another one. And we can basically feed information we know about the crops into a computer. The computer can then make understandings about the crops that maybe we don't even know, because we're using machine learning to do this with just giving it annotated information. And then the best thing about this is to give it to things like drones or other robots to go and deliver the right nutrients or pesticides to exactly where it needs to go. And the benefit of this is that we reduce our inputs, especially in expensive inputs like fertilizers. And then we also reduce things like pesticides or herbicides that might cause environmental damage if they're to be like washed out or sprayed, randomly across crops. So we expect farming to always go in this direction. Farmers are one of the biggest users of satellite information. So in Australia, our most successful space startups are actually precision agriculture startups that link satellites with farmers. So farmers are drivers of technology as well. Okay, so we use technology all the way across our farms, and it's in not just with the first thing I think about when I think about technology on farming in the future is like drones, and that's very important. They are very important, but there's so much other technology that exists on a farm. And as we move forward, the things that we'll see is an increase in data and specificity of data, and then that feeding back into things that can go and do something with that data. So you can think about them as actuators. Okay, everyone's favorite topic, the ethics. So I'm doing an MBA at the moment, and the class I've done the best in at the moment is ethics. And I really enjoyed it. I hated ethics before I started this. And when I went and actually had a look at it, I'm like, oh, that's actually kind of interesting. But everyone used to ask me all the time because of my implant and stuff, oh, what about the ethics of it? And I'm like, I don't care about the ethics. You know, I'm an engineer. I want the how, not the why. But I've come around a bit. It is important. So one of the big problems with new technologies, especially very powerful ones like machine learning, AI, is reduction in jobs. And we can sway past this and say, oh, universal basic income will fix all this. But it's a real concern, and it's a real concern of actually getting this technology into existence as well. To get government funding, you have to be able to provide a translation of tax dollars into things that are for the common good. Or that's how it's meant to work. It doesn't always work that way, but it's very important. So I've spoken to some government officials recently, and they said, listen, if you can show us how many jobs you'll make and how much you can improve the quality of life in places where there maybe aren't a lot of job prospects, we will give you basically as much money as you want. So we should, I'm personally of the mind that UBI is great, really awesome. No one should have to starve. But I think that humans working in harmony with AI is the real way forward. And I think that no one should have to work on a farm if they don't want. We've passed that point. But if you do want to work on a farm, you should be able to have the ability to do it and do it in a fun way where you maybe share the burden of the bad jobs with AI. And also, work is a way of understanding more about yourself and the land. And recently I read a paper by Werner Vinge from 1993. And he referenced another paper from the 60s, which was talking about the Polynesian lifestyle. And this basically you work when you want and you choose what to do. And I think that AI and humans working together for farming is the best way of doing that. I'll also link those papers if anyone's interested. So the other one, I talked briefly before about environmental concerns. So does anyone know the name of this guy? He was found in Byron Bay. His name is Toadzilla. He weighed over 3 kilograms, and this is an example of what can go wrong when we do things like move. So there's an introduced species in Australia. He's called a cane toad. We introduced him to eat the cane beetle. He didn't eat the cane beetle. He ate everything else, and anything that eats him dies. Now we're seeing evolution slowly starting to catch up. So some Australian animals have worked out if they wash the toad, they can eat him. If the rats dissect the guts, they can eat certain parts. But it is important that we think about technologies or decisions that we make before we do it, because we can have negative effects that we haven't anticipated. And GMOs, while they've been safe so far, we've fed 1 trillion meals with GMO food without a problem. That doesn't mean there won't be a problem in the future. I don't think that we should use a precautionary principle of waiting until we know where it's wrong, but I think we should keep our eyes open about how the technology might affect the environment, because the environment is pretty delicate at the moment, and farming has a huge impact on it. And also the moral concerns about genetic manipulation. So just to touch on this, we're seeing the first genetically modified humans. There is Nana and Lulu, I think it is, 2 Chinese girls created by He Jiankang. I pronounced his last name wrong, but that's basically what it looks like. He genetically modified them to be HIV resistant and maybe more intelligent. So the genie is out of the bottle. You can't put it back in, but it doesn't mean that we can't have open conversations with all the stakeholders in our community, and that extends just beyond transhumanists. So I think that as we make decisions about what it means to be human, all stakeholders need to be taken into account and conversed with to avoid any conflict or conflict where we don't want. And it's something I've kind of come around to. I think I was quite arrogant when I was younger about being like, you know what, I'm going to do whatever I want and fuck everyone else. And now I'm kind of like, you know what, I think it's an important part of being human is actually reaching out and having these conversations and understanding that even if people don't agree with you, it's important to understand that you both see where you're both coming from. Okay, I'll just go through a couple of quick case studies. So I'm very, very interested in aquaculture. The first example I'm going to show you is an example of mariculture, which is going to let me, okay, hold on. I'm just going to silence this. I don't know what, okay. So this is an example of mariculture or a sea farm. These things are like beyond comprehension. They are so large, and it's basically taking the idea of kind of free-range farming of mainly fish in the oceans. And we've just cracked the ability to farm tuna and bluefin tuna. This only happened in the last 5 years, and a number of other species. We're moving into farming octopus. This is something that's started recently, and probably one of the most exciting for me is we've been able to farm eels for the first time, complete the life cycle in Japan. So almost every species, the way that we domesticate or bring them into aquaculture is by understanding the life cycle. And once we understand the life cycle end to end, and we can kind of, progress post nature, remove it from the environment, do it inside a laboratory, we then move into doing things like seeding these huge sea farms. This is another sea farm. That one's not too exciting. So mariculture and sea cages is awesome. This is really exciting. We're doing a lot in Australia. There are some environmental concerns. Some of the best places to farm in sea cages is the rivers of Tasmania and the Great Barrier Reef. Both these places, the waste from having such a high concentration of animals is causing damage to the environment. Now, this is not something that has to happen straight off the coast. It's just capitalism means that that's where it happens. If we're really forward thinking, there's plenty of other places we can go. We might want to create eutrophic environments, high in nutrients, far, far out in the ocean potentially. And I think the thing that excites me most about these projects is the scale. So these things are, the size of suburbs, and the ability to think, okay, if we can farm it in the ocean, we farm it in cages, maybe one day we can farm it on Venus or Mars or in space. That's where I'd like to see that technology go. What happened there? Hold on. Oh, that's what happened. Hold on. I don't know. Joe. There we go. Hey. Okay. Does anyone know what this is? It's a bit controversial. It's golden rice. So this is probably one of the greatest examples of the project itself has some problems, but the idea behind it is awesome. So rice contains almost everything that you need to survive. It's a really good staple food, feeds billions of people a year. But in some impoverished countries, especially Southeast Asia, a lot of people were going blind from vitamin A deficiency. So some genetic engineers said, hey, why don't we take this beta carotene, this vitamin A, and we'll just genetically engineer it into rice. Other plants can make it, why not this one? So they took it in and they made golden rice. Now, there's been some controversy over how this was delivered and whether it actually gets absorbed by the body in the right ways and things. But I think at its core, it represents a positive view for how we should use technology to benefit the world, especially farming. I would highly recommend having a look at some of the politics behind it, because it will show you some of the roadblocks that are encountered when we think about these types of technologies, both practically, biologically, politically, and ethically. There's a lot of people who are anti-GMO who are vested interest in not allowing these crops to succeed. In Indonesia, there were groups of people, Greenpeace was one of them, who were actually willingly destroying the test crops because they were anti-GMO. So it's important that we have conversations with groups like this to understand what is their fucking problem. Really cool though. Another really cool use of farming technologies is something called xenotransplantation. So this is the idea that if I need a new liver, I can actually grow a human liver inside a pig, and when that pig is harvested, I can take that liver and put it inside me. It might even be able to have my own genetics, which means I don't have to take anti-rejection medications. Now, if we're okay with growing animals for meat or other products like that, we can think that growing an animal for an organ would probably be ethically okay too. Of course, it's a bit controversial, but it is surprisingly very possible. So we've actually had some of the earliest xenotransplantation occur in China. Now, Ray just asked the question, is the pig halal? It would definitely not be halal. Any product from a pig wouldn't be, but also like, you can grow it in other animals as well. But even then, I'm not sure whether it would be okay to put an animal organ inside a human from a religious perspective. So a lot of religions have issues around mixing animals or putting blood from other things in. I know that that's somewhere in there, but I'm not an expert in religion, so I'll leave that one all alone. The only thing you can't do is grow the brain in there. If you put the brain in, no good. Yeah, start going around eating grass. Okay, and the final use case I want to talk about a bit, which is really common in Australia and popular, is the use of blockchain in farming. So this enables us, probably the most best use of blockchain I've seen is in provenance. So we can track from paddock to plate all the way along using sensors. We can have information about where things are grown, how they're shipped, how long it's been since they've been harvested, and whether they were grown in your own country, whether they were grown ethically, all stored on a blockchain that the public can access and use this information to make decisions about what we eat. So I think blockchain's best use of all is in publicly available provenance information. And this can also be tied into things like insurance. It can be tied into cost, and we can use this data to improve the lives of everyone. And there's a lot of blockchain startups. If you're interested in that stuff, please go check it out. I couldn't even name them in 3 hours if I wouldn't have a look, even the ones in Australia.
We were having a chat with the Ansto guys, and they got this X-ray scanner, and it measures the isotopes in the particular environment of the food.
Ooh.
And they were to track that and build a database around that and prove that the end delivery of that product, it's actually in that exact same spot. So I was like, what?
It's pretty incredible.
They're testing out with like Kookaburra plums.
Oh wow!
And a native Australian plant.
And also, it adds so much value as well. If you can prove that something was grown somewhere that was healthy, people are willing to pay for this because they want to be healthier themselves. So I think in creating premium products, especially if you're in a developing nation, to be able to provide that information and then compete using technology, I think it's a great outcome. I don't know what happened there. Yeah. Okay, challenges. Well, we covered a few of them. I'm just going to go through this quite quickly. So the first one's economic challenges. So how do we get money to come to us to make this transhuman farming dream a reality? In Australia, the biggest hurdle I've had to overcome is, even though there's a lot of money available from banks for housing and things, for farming projects, there's an inherent amount of risk. That farms and farming technology are reasonably, or especially farms, are very illiquid assets. They are hard to move. They sell slowly. And one of the problems with this is that raising money can be difficult. Also, they're very expensive. A farm might be $7 million. And to raise that amount of capital just to buy the asset to then put technology on it, so you need to raise maybe another $7 million. But the first $7 million is all tied up in this one asset. So that's a huge problem. One of the reasons sea farms are so popular is because you don't buy the land or the ocean, you rent through a license to use the area. People have overcome this problem in other countries. So wild harvest is a big one. In New Zealand, crayfish are harvested naturally from state forests, and they're not farmed. But one of the problems is that it's a highly labor-intensive product. So economically, it is tricky. It's very expensive. Some of these farms are huge. One of the biggest prawn farms in Australia that's being built right now in the northwest. There's $2 billion across tens of thousands of hectares. The scale is beyond comprehension. You see these things from planes, and it's just ponds are about 1 hectare or more. In fact, even some algae farms, 5 to 10 hectares per pond, and a hectare is the size of a football field. So these things are bigger than stadiums. And they're just in huge grids next to each other. Really good use of desert land, but where do you raise the capital for something like this? And when you do, these projects take tens of years to come to fruition. So people get worried because what can happen across 10 years? COVID can happen in 10 years. Global financial crisis can happen. So the risk goes up as the scale grows. So that is a huge problem. Political challenges, regulatory frameworks are pretty difficult, but one of the good things is they're reasonably consistent around the world. There's projects to move to countries with less regulations, so that's not a huge one. And farming in international waters is pretty cool because you're only subject to some of the laws and some of the economic restrictions. Social challenges, yeah, so I guess people are pretty upset about some of these technologies and how they change things. We kind of touched on that already. The future. Okay, we're coming up to the end. We've got a conclusion after this. So what is it going to look like? I just remembered I missed one thing. I'm going to show you a one thing, if I can. I was going to show you a video which I think is what has me most excited for the future.
And yeah,
Hey, how you going?
yeah, good things. Like had worked or had a little nap and a nap with a big sleep and
Good.
I got lost. Now I'm here.
I was lost, but now I'm found.
Lost but now
The
I'm
live stream here, so we're all recording
Okay,
as well.
so this is what I think the future of farming looks like. I know I've said drones aren't everything. Well, let's see what they actually are doing though. This is from 4 months ago. And one thing I want you to notice, DJI, who are probably the biggest mover and shaker in agricultural drones, have basically moved all of their focus to China. China is adopting drones and farming technologies at an insane rate. One reason for this is there's only about 17% arable land in China. So, and they've basically hit their limit for their ability to grow farms out. Farming is strictly controlled by the government. You're told what you can and can't farm because the whole country will fall to pieces if enough food isn't produced. They are using drones to do things to increase their ability to make more food from the same amount of land. And I thought, oh, maybe a little bit. It is. I'll talk a little. We'll watch the video, but there's quite a lot to it.
Oh, we're not seeing any videos. We're only seeing text.
the volume's also.
Oh, because he's sharing the slides.
Oh,
Yeah, so unshare and then share.
Actually, one of your slides.
yeah, I couldn't.
That's what they're saying right there.
Okay, yeah. Hold on.
You're sharing the.
Go to Google Meets and then unshare. Just
That's
You're sharing the window, not the screen.
yeah, tap it to Google Meets.
Here it is.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
Hi, Peter. Is this being broadcasted
It does.
on Facebook?
It does. You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
You can see it and hear it, okay?
Yeah, I'm here. I just want to know if you're broadcasting this on Facebook.
No, we're not broadcasting this on Facebook, but you can if you want. But it's streaming on the Google Meet only right now.
It's bigger than I thought it was.
It's huge. These things are very big. 21 hectares an hour. So what would take someone maybe 2 to 6 days, this thing can do in minutes. It's powered by precision agriculture as well. Some of this stuff doesn't seem that exciting, but I've been watching this for about the last 5 years, and the technology has come so incredibly far.
It looks bigger.
It's huge. The battery life, and you can tell they've really listened to what the farmers have wanted. The ways of programming these things is trivial. So that was probably we just saw there that you spread seeds and feed using it, which has implications for animal agriculture and aquaculture.
Spraying herbicides?
Yeah, both at the same time. They can have different tanks going in. It has the ability to work out where the terrain is underneath the trees, so it will stay the same height even across smaller terrain.
I'm having trouble with scale and near and far away. Does that look like it's about 2 meters across that?
Yeah, something along these lines.
Are you sponsored by DJI?
I want to be, please. Okay, so how do we even program this stuff? It's so cool. What you can do is you can put it in a backpack or on the back of a motorbike or a car, and you drive where you want it to go. And when you get back, it has it on the map, and then you just tell it what to do at each location. So you don't need to be, a computer expert to be able to use these things very powerfully. And yeah, it's got its own power supply, so you can just hot drop batteries in and out. Basically, anything you think, haha, that would be a problem, they've probably solved it. I'm going to charge. Crazy. And you know, the use the Chinese guy in the app.
DJ.
That's a big one.
Yeah. So like, and conclusion. Okay. Transhumanism farming. These are a match made in heaven. And I think that farming was the birth of what will one day become transhumanism. I think pushing ourselves forward, we need to be hyper aware of things like our food supply, especially when we think about things like we're promoting super longevity. Okay, so we're all going to live forever. How the hell are we going to feed everyone? And AIs might be able to do that, but I think we should be very conscious and forward thinking about it, which means that as we invest in certain technologies, we need to think about the implications of how they might affect other technologies. A big one of that is farming. We're all pretty chill about it, but the population is growing. Arable land isn't really. Maybe global warming will increase the amount of arable land, but it will also cause a lot of other problems. We know the monsoon is being disrupted in India, and that's now the biggest population on Earth. And that rain is hitting Australia. Great for us, shit for them. We need to be forward thinking about how we use technology to feed everybody. And what are we doing now? Well, myself, my fiance, and my business partner, John, who's a transhuman coin holder, are buying a farm.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a link. I think I have here a link to, I don't know if this will show. It does. Here we go. So I've got a link to a video of the farm that we're thinking about buying.
You move to the country?
We're going to move to the country.
Putting your mouth where your money is.
That's it. So
Colliers.
we found this this awesome property. It's in tropical far north Queensland. It's like as far north as you can go. I'll do a little video and then kind of explain why we think it's such a great idea. So basically what you can see now is a huge aquaculture facility. It looks kind of boring. Inside that shed is the ability to produce fish, crayfish, octopuses, whatever you want. There's a whole heap of aquaculture tanks. There's a huge amount of water on the farm. It's in tropical North Queensland. So we have a wet and a dry season that drops megaliters of water on the property every year. As global warming increases, we're getting more La Niñas, La Niñas, which increases the amount of rainfall in the tropics in Australia. There's a number of technologies on there. So there's excavators and things like this. There are crocodiles on there, which we will probably keep as pets. That's about it. But I don't know how many uses there are for them. They actually make some anti-cancer compounds, which is interesting. We'll be doing some research on there.
Sidebar.
Laser-headed crocodiles. The property is huge. It's 880 hectares. So one of the first things that we want to be able to do is put some accommodation on there. So transhumanists from around the world can come and use that as a facility to try out new technologies, to meet each other, to spend time if they need to get away from it all and just have some downtime for thinking. Hopefully the farm will be producing enough food that will be able to feed more than ourselves and hopefully make a profit. There's 3 other guest houses on the property. There are wild crocodiles in the river just down there, and we're surrounded by 66,000 hectares of national park. We'd love to be able to track all of the metrics of the farm using sensors. We're very lucky. You can see in the background, there's power poles. The entire farm has electricity connected. There are pipes all the way across. The initial builder spent about $17 million developing the farm and then left. And it's basically looking for people to reimagine it. And we said, wow, what a great opportunity. We'd love to grab a whole heap of people who are forward thinking and futuristic to go and turn it into something more than it is. So I'll just quickly zip through anything.
17 million, that farm must be.
What's that?
If you put 17 million in there, I'm assuming that farm must be at least 20. You know?
They're very illiquid assets.
Okay.
So they're very hard to sell. The farm's only $3 million at the moment.
Oh,
There are problems though because it's very, very far away from everything. It has a landing strip on it, but it is very, very far away. It's the biggest nearest city is Cairns, which is 3.5 hours drive away.
okay.
And
Well,
south. So it's very, very far north. But basically, we'd love to run blockchain on the farm to be able to keep track of all the metrics. We would like to put accommodation on there. We'd love to run farm management system. We'd love to be able to do trials of things like using transhuman coin as a currency in a small replica of a town. We'd love to be able to do things like letting people try out their autonomous vehicles, VTOL, or cars, if we have the ability. Someone won't hurt anyone. We think about, what if you had 880 hectares and the ability to have internet using Starlink and electricity using solar, what could you do with that space? So we invite you, please, if there's, join us and help us to create something really beautiful. Thank you very much for your time.
Transhuman AgTech future. Project Australia, man. That's right.
Do you want to write that on? And we'll,
Thanks, man.
thank you.
Right. Questions?
Straight for the coffee and the
That's it. I'll top you up, man. All right. Feel free to ask your questions. Yeah, unpresent. Up in the middle there. And we'll answer away.
All right, I don't think there's anyone. I have. Could you just speak, Jade?
Yeah, I can speak.
Oh, beautiful.
I got a question. What's your opinion on vertical farming?
I don't like it.
Why?
So I think that lab grown meat is kind of the same thing, which is that it's solving a problem that doesn't really exist. So like, I think that cities are good for people, and the country is good for farming. The reason for this is farming is very efficient in the bush. So if we think about like growing a hectare of crops in the city is taking up real estate that could be used by more people. There are some benefits to vertical farming, so that the carbon impact you think would be lower, but it's not necessarily the case. So one of the great things about broadacre farming is that we have relatively few inputs. So the sun provides a lot of the power. The big problem is transporting from the bush to the city. That's about the only downside of farming in the bush. But farming in the city, there's huge amounts of problems, and the main one is it doesn't make economic sense. Like, I live in we'll just say 35 square meter apartment that I'm paying $700 a week for, and my footprint on the land is tiny because I'm in a 23-story building. There is no way you could farm anything, even saffron, and make it economically viable. We can do it because we like it, so we can have green spaces on the rooftop. But if I was to have a green space on the rooftop, I would prefer flowers rather than chili peppers. But that's me personally. Like, I think that if you want to grow stuff in the city, do it. But I think vertical farming makes sense some places. So maybe like if you are in the Sahara Desert and you have some like self-contained environments, you might want to do vertical farming there. But I haven't seen a single vertical farming project that works, that delivers any value, really. Like most of these things grow lettuce. And like, fuck, lettuce is like the lowest value. Well, actually, last year they might have all made a profit when lettuces went to $12. But even then they might struggle. It takes time, energy, it's very efficient, but it's that's kind of it. I'm like, why would I farm in the city when I can farm in the bush? Does that answer your question, Jay?
Yep. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Great question, by the way.
We can talk more next time, but yeah.
I'm also like, I'm very opinionated on that and also lab grown meat. So like, I'm very bearish on lab grown meat. I kind of don't really see I can understand there's some arguments for it, but I think we should be trying to make high value products in small spaces like cities, like medicines. Yeah.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions? Thank you, Jade. Any other questions?
I'm in the chat, huh?
We're going to chat. Let's have a look. Meow, where can I invest in your farm? Meow, I want to come and move to tropical North Queensland, 33 degrees every single day. I want a tree change to paradise. Is Elon Musk going to sponsor you with Starlink?
That'd be nice.
It would be nice. It would be nice. Awesome. Well, if there's no other questions, I might leave it at that. Thank you very much for your time and your attention.
Yeah.
It's been a privilege speaking to you all. I look forward to any opportunities we can have. And I'd love to get in touch with any people from any other continent that are keen to talk farming technologies because I'm excited about.
Yeah. Let's stop on YouTube and then we'll do a follow-up where you present on the farm.
On the farm.
Yeah.
Well, you've all got a standing invitation to come out and visit. Yeah, you have to feed the crocodiles, so that's one.
Not with yourself.
We've got crocodiles and an excavator. Anyone wants anyone whacked? Wait, we recording?
Yeah.
Wait, it was AI. It was AI.
That's all right. I'll clip it out. I'll clip the presentation.
There you go.
That's awesome.
I don't know.
All right, top yourselves up and anything else? It's great to see you guys. Oh, got network problems. Great. Yeah, that's all good. Yeah, I think, mate, isn't it like 3 a.m. over there?
It says it's 2:20 a.m. So yeah, it's like
I think you.
We don't know how you do it.
Charles, what do you
We don't
think?
know how you do it. Yeah. Well, look, Mel, that was interesting. That was quite great, and I think we should engage further and see how to partner, and invest in that too.
We had Simon Weislander, who was we were actually pitching to Aruba, the minister for Aruba, on a dedicated innovation pilot for all this land that we could actually acquire and turn into an innovation hub. But yeah, this is something that we can actually test out here in Australia right now.
I think technology is great when it's real and tangible. If you speak to someone in rural Australia about how the blockchain can help them, it might seem so abstract they can't tie it to something concrete. But if you can show small increases in stuff they're familiar with, they will be more excited to take on more technology. People think farmers don't like technology. That is a myth. And I found it out by going and speaking and spending time with farmers. They love technology, but they have had so much failure and so many empty promises that they are very wary of new technologies. So I think being able to deliver small, tangible things that improve the lives of people is a really good way to spread the other messages that we want about, what if it's good even further.
Yeah.
But we just start with something that's concrete, that actually does something for them, rather than just saying, this would be great.
Yeah, and speaking to the narrative as well, it's like, you're generating more yield, right? It's like more crops, more output.
That's it. And it can help people all around the world bring them to our side. Like if they see, you know, I've listened to what these guys have said or used their technology and I've improved the lives of my family and my town and my country, they're going to want to jump on board for the bigger messages like let's cure aging, let's cure death, let's share knowledge, let's do all these things that are core to the values of transhumanism.
What do you need? What do you need to fund? Purchase?
What do I need at the moment? Well, there's a few things. So there's some government grants that we're going to take. We're looking to partner with people that might have technologies or want to use our space. We're looking for people to join the cause on the ground who want to build technology. So if you love IoT and you just want to go like absolutely bananas, like we have 880 hectares that needs IoTifying. If you're in it, VR and augmented reality, please bring your drones and let us see if we can monitor this huge property using it. If you're into space stuff, get in contact with us. We'd love to use your satellite imagery. If you're anything that you think would help us would be amazing. And also we are looking for investors, but that's probably like not the hardest thing that we've got at the moment. The hardest thing is like getting people aligned towards a common cause. Yeah.
It's the land purchase you're going to get across the line, and it's about the actual capex of building the infrastructure and all the accelerators, right?
Yeah, and if you have a project that you want to bring to the farm, if you have a new grain you want to try out, if you want to try out some drone technology, if you want to test out your blockchain, get in contact with us and see if we can use this facility as a platform to test out new ideas. Because part of the reason I want this farm is I have all these ideas and no farmer will let me just have access to the farm to do it. We need places like this. Also, if you want to come over and run a conference on the farm, please organize Transhuman conference in Australia. We're going to be in tropical paradise. Come over and hang out with us and see what synergy is created. I'll make sure we've got enough booze ready so that we can all have a great time.
Like brew your own, right? Right there.
That's it.
Transhuman beer.
That's it. Glow in the dark beer. That's it. But please.
And those ponds there, they're ponds that exist year round.
So we have 3 massive dams. These hold like megaliters of water. They're called header dams, and they're higher than the rest of the farm. And they fill up during the wet season, and then we use them by gravity to drain into the other ponds throughout the year, and then those drain back into the river system once we process the effluent. There's about 12 hectares of dams that are usable right now. There's also about the header dams are about 20 hectares. Mini hydro is definitely possible. So one of the things we're thinking about is how do we generate power here? And I was like, if we could just lift up the ground 1 meter and catch the water 1 meter off the ground and use that 1 meter, we could probably power our farm for 10 years off just the potential that's in that water before it hits the ground. Wind might be possible. Solar is definitely possible. The farm, as I imagine it, will use about 0.3 megawatts as it is now when it's at full capacity with crayfish or fish, which means we will need a mini solar array there. Once we do that, though, the infrastructure for the farm is quite good. So we'll be using LoRa WAN to get all of our sensors to communicate. We will need to build a farm management system. I've been starting to play around with this in Python and Flask because Python kind of works on everything. Arduinos and Raspberry Pis and all the sensors can speak to each other. But my dream is to be able to have an AR headset, and instead of getting up and walking around the ponds, lazy as I am, we'll put on my AR headset. I'll fly drones around the ponds, see if any tasks need to be done. And then if I need to, I'll physically go out. But I should be able to realistically one day run this farm from Sydney.
Wow.
Now, Ray said, what did you say, Ray? Here we go. With solar, you could use a reflection off the water surface of the dam to boost the power output. Yes, so one of the things you can do is called photovoltaics. So this is where you put solar panels actually under the water, under the surface of the pond, and you use the water to cool the solar panels. So you increase their efficiency. It's pretty exciting. especially if you have something like crayfish, which doesn't need huge amounts of sunlight. The thing is, with a farm like this, your brain explodes with the possibilities of what can be done. I've tried to like corral my thoughts into like some laser precision. It's just not me. So instead, I'm saying, please come and join me so that we can make all our crazy farm dreams come true. Also, it's so big, we can actually put a space launch pad on the facility. And there is one space startup in Queensland that has expressed interest in us building a spaceport. Now, if Charles builds one in Nigeria, we can just have farm to Transhuman headquarters.
You get fresh grains in Nigeria, right?
And the world turns that way. So you can just go up, wait for half a rotation, come back down the land, and
it's raining crane.
That's it. But we can build a spaceport, no worries.
These crayfish, how do you feed them? Do they eat naturally, or do you have to supplement?
So they eat everything, and at the moment the feeds are made mainly from soy. So one of the a lot of fish need to be fed fish products, which can create problems. It's a big concern for the aquaculture industry at the moment. Our crayfish will be fed mainly soy, but at the moment I'm looking into an organism called, one second, I'll just drop the link of what it is. It's a microalgae, and it produces a highly valuable pigment, similar to what was in the golden rice, but it's actually a form of beta carotene that has been modified, and it's called astaxanthin. It's potentially a longevity drug. Not enough research has been done on it at the moment. It does a huge amount of awesome stuff. It reduces your cholesterol, increases skin elasticity. I think one thing we don't talk about enough in transhumanism, we all have this super longevity, but I want like super beauty as well. I don't want to look like I'm 300 years old. I want to look like beautiful and radiant in the future. So it can be used in the cosmetic industry. It can be used as an animal feed as well. And crayfish actually grow it in their shells. So I'm looking at growing this microalgae in some of the ponds to feed to the crayfish. So it upcycles nitrogen into amino acids, has carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Then I can take this microalgae and feed it to the crayfish as almost a complete supplement. And the things that eat this microalgae, like zooplankton, can also be fed to the crayfish. So we can take carbon dioxide, sunlight, some nitrogen, and then we can use this as a start to the food chain. And that carbon dioxide can be produced via the outputs of other biotech processes. So Peter was talking before about setting up a brewery. It's one of the ideas we had is to do a lot of fermentation, not just alcohol, but high value biotech products. My background is in biotech and microbiology. So we can feed the carbon dioxide output of the fermenters into the microalgae and then use that carbon to create the biomass and the high value oils because they've got the carbon backbone, and then use that as the beginning of the food chain. That's my idea now. This is 3 years down the track, but hopefully,
What about growing snails? I hear that snails they uptake a lot of carbon, and it turns to calcium carbonate in their shells, and then using that, crushing up the snails and using that as feed for the crayfish.
Snails are fantastic. We're in a climate that you can grow a lot of them. There's a few native snails and invasive snails in Australia we're legally allowed to farm. Australia's got high regulation. Everything we do here, the government needs to red stamp it 1 million times. Snails is definitely something I'd be interested in breeding. And to extend that a bit more, insects are a great use of upcycling protein. And we can think about, as you said, snails and insects as an intermediary. So even if we're not eating them, if we can be upcycling that nitrogen and carbon through into higher value products, we're doing well. And ultimately, we need to create things that people want to buy because that's what will drive the money, and then that will drive the research. So no one really wants to eat crickets. But you can feed crickets to chickens, and chickens make eggs, and we can eat chickens and eggs. So maybe we don't always have to settle on the intermediary. We can just say, well, that is part of a process to generate things that people will pay a lot for. But I like your style art. If you want to come over and set up my what do they call people who grow snails? They have a cool name.
I don't know.
Because the snail's name is like helix or
hexans.
yeah, heliculture.
Oh, Corky will love this.
Let's have a
They're
find out.
hexans.
Snail farmers. They have a cool name. Snail farming. It's called. What is it called? Let's have a look.
Helioculture.
There we go. Helio. What's that? I'm a helio. I'm not a snail farmer. I'm a helioculturalist. Farm the helixes, bro.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So I think also snails can do some cool things. We've built bio batteries inside snails. We can harvest them for electricity.
The Matrix.
That's it. It's just snails there.
Snail matrix. Yeah.
It's endless.
Could be like the
algae
one-
and wet food in there.
one
Little
snail.
VR.
Yeah. That's epic.
And I think as well, one of the things that's come out of the pandemic is that we're a much more connected world.
Mm.
We don't all have to live in the city. Because we can work from home, we kind of work from wherever we want. It actually frees us up to go to places where our technology can solve real problems really easily. When we stay in the cities, we can be like, oh, I'm going to make deliveries that happen in 15 minutes. Nobody actually cares if it takes 15 minutes or 30 minutes for something to arrive, unless it's like a condom or something, Everything else you can wait. But in the country, people have real problems that need to be solved using technology. Like you can get an Arduino and a laptop and a mobile phone, and you can change someone's life because you save them 4 hours a day by doing something as simple as being able to tell whether a farm gate is open or closed. And this stuff for us is trivial. It takes us 3 hours, 4 hours to solve. But you can have such a huge impact. It doesn't have to be commercialized either. Like we can just use technology to improve people's lives. And when I went to the country, every problem people told me, I'm like, this is so easy. In the city, it's impossible, to create a startup that has any value. Everything's already been solved. But in the country, they've got real problems, man. You can go and help them out. One thing I'd love to do is have hackathons where we get everyone from the city to come and have dialogue with the local farmers and say, what together could we do to really just quantum leap stuff forward really quickly. And this stuff helps everyone around the world. Small little solutions.
It's going to be a destination.
Yeah, I hope so.
Charles is working on the private jet for Transhuman Coin.
Yeah.
He's going to add this to the stock.
Come and land it on the farm. We've got a runway, Charles. Come and land on the farm.
Awesome.
And if anyone wants to fly or bring your piloting skills over, please. We've had some people who want to build some ultralight aircraft approach us, which is going to be exciting. If you have any ideas, please let us know. The most important thing is we're looking for synergy. What are things you can bring that will link in with other ideas we have to create more than the sum of the parts?
Yeah. And what's most important is that sort of common alignment, the mission. So before you joined, we actually had a call with PureDAO as part of the Scientific Advisory Board, and they're all about how to accumulate decentralized science and get people to measure their health data and actually share that for scientific research in a private and secure way and to incentivize that, right? To monetize that as well. So this whole transhumanism movement is we've got that shared values, and turning a project like this and having almost a home, it's people, laws and land, right? So we're talking about the network state, the transhuman coin and the whole transhumanist movement, having a piece of land, having our decentralized autonomous organization in terms of how the voting happens, and having the people and the knowledge of the neural networks to actually come in and help make that happen.
And once we have all this, once we have it all going and we've got systems that really, really work, half of the farm is surrounded by a river, and I've got an excavator. I can just excavate around the other side, put the crocodiles in the boat, and we can just secede from Australia, like Transhumanistan. We can
Transhumanistan.
That's it. We can have our transhumanist coin as our local currency.
Remember, we were going to buy some place in Tasmania and call it Transhumania.
That's it.
This is it.
But
this is going to be.
And the thing is, once you get to the property as well, we can run it as a community that runs on the values, using the principles and the currencies and the technologies that we want.
It's all from Mana. It's all from Mana.
That's the Australia project.
It's Australia project.
Yeah.
And the big point is this acts as a lighthouse. it's sending out a signal to people around the world saying, hey, we are trying to do something audacious and crazy.
Beacon for transhumanist tech.
That's it. And we want to attract you here, either virtually, you don't have to physically be there, you can dial in, but come and help us create a shared dream on this space where all of our thought and effort goes to create something that's good for all the participants and hopefully other people as well.
Big round of applause. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Charles, and the whole Transhuman Coin for taking the time to listen and get involved. And please, you can find me on Twitter. You can get in contact with me through Peter. If you're keen to get involved, let me know. I would love to have you on board.
Awesome. We're uploading this to our Transhumanism Australia YouTube channel, and we'll post it as well into the 16,000 holder community that we've got in the Transhuman Coin. And essentially, it's going to be a huge utility. Charles, last words?
Thank you so much, Ludo. That was amazing. And and
Also,
to everyone. Yeah, go ahead, Ludo.
I just wanted to say at the end as well, if you have any ideas about how Transhuman Coin might be used on the farm, please let us know, because we are really open to exploring practically how this could be. We'd love to offer anyone who has Transhuman Coin the ability to stay on the farm as holders, but are there ways that we can use it in ways that increases its value? Because John is a huge holder of Transhuman Coin, and we'd love to hear your ideas about how to work together.
Oh yeah, there's gonna be a whole avalanche.
I hope so.
And post it in the community chat if you've got ideas as well, and we actually can set up a community vote on that too. So the most popular votes will actually get implemented and funded as well. Awesome. All right. Okay. Well, that's the official end of things. We're going to network here. Charles, final word.
Yeah. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Art, for staying so long. I mean, I know it's almost like 3 a.m. where you are, and you've been here for 3 hours, literally. We appreciate you. And to Fusion Party, Science Party officials, Peter, TSC community, and everyone who participated, we said thank you so much for being part of this. And Ludo, again, that was really amazing. Thank you.
Brother. And great luck with the election today. Peter, over for the win. Good. All right, guys. Thanks, all. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Later.
Thank you all. It was very informative. See you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Have a good one, everyone.